Human way has now become more consumerist rather than humanist.
You choose to feel nothing because now everyone wants a hook.
It's at the end of the day easier for systems to guide a dumb population.
We've seen the recent case where a girl has one good significant compensation from Meta.
The moment a tragedy is made very specific, only then people tend to care.
You basically become a spectator from a witness.
I've been following the Iran-US situation for weeks now. I've seen the videos of missile strikes, the statement from both sides, the stock markets, the gas prices, and whatnot, and even the human cost of it. But it did not affect me until one day, my chai ki tapri wale bhaiya told me that he'll no longer be able to serve tea because the gas prices have gone up. And that is when the war became real. I guess we've all reached the last mile of tragedy. The global numbers no longer affect us, and we only care to bother about any of these things when it hits our own street. So today we decided to discuss how has apathy become our survival mechanism over time, and why have we stopped caring?
Welcome to the Free Flow podcast. This is your host Yashodhar Gulati.
And I am Anushka.
And I just got to thinking, are we still human the way we see the world around us?
People would say that, yeah, we are humane enough, but if you see their habits, the way they research for a normal sneaker that they would want to buy, or anything in their life that they are really consuming, the way they spend hours on researching that one thing is nowhere equal to them reading about what's happening in the world. Leave behind world, what's happening around them in terms of news, where's the world headed, where's the country headed. They do not care for it enough. And if you see from afar, it comes to you as if the human psychology and human way has now become more consumerist rather than humanist.
And this is at a time when we are living in the most connected era where we are supposed to be, more humane, I guess. And not only that, I feel we should be able to show a bit more empathy towards everything happening around us.
Right. Also, what do you feel on the fact that have people actually started to care less, or has it just become their coping mechanism, or they've been tuned in a way that the lesser they care, the better for them?
Because it's just everything that is happening around us, it is way too overwhelming. I feel it's, be it the war, be it the inflation, be it the job, be it everything that we have ongoing in our personal lives, and then at the same time, it's just too much of a burden for each and every one, and it usually becomes very difficult to, how do you curate your mind कि भाई ये करना है ये करना है ये करना है ये करना है. You start to feeling very less about each and everything, and you become very relentless, and at a point where you start feeling nothing about anything.
Yeah, and do you feel how we cared for things previously has also evolved, and how care looks now is very different from what it used to look like previously?
Definitely, obviously. Earlier, we used to care way too much about news. We used to care about what's happening around the world. And up to an extent, we were actually bothered about, yeah, let's say, any, let's say we're gonna consider what's happening down the street. You would be actually worried कि यार, is that person okay in a, let's say, a neighborhood, or let's consider a relative, something is happening in their own lives, and you're bothered कि यार, come on, they're your peers, you feel bad about something that's going on and everything. But at a point where we are, do you think we care about anything that matters? Matlab, the moment you have to move a finger or a single thought towards anything, you're like, it's way too much.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And that's probably because you're already so overstimulated with the things that you have in your hands reach. So think about it like if you hear the word war, 100 times in a week, would you even care about it any longer? And that's what has happened with the world currently. Since I'll not just go back too much in time, but if you start from January, you'd seen what happened in Venezuela, how all of it unfolded. Then you moved on for a little bit, and then you got to this point where Iran and US have been fighting for over a month now, and that doesn't seem to stop. How entire Middle East got involved in it, and all of it was equally very serious. You had your social media feeds filled with missile strikes in the entire region of Iran coming in, Israel coming in, and even in Dubai, UAE, everywhere. So when you see a lot of it, I think your emotional tendency to react to it also shuts down. And because we are in the business of all of it, somehow I've got to realize that the moment a tragedy is made very specific, only then people tend to care. For a general tragedy, people do not care as much.
Basically, we are desensitized toward everything these days, because let's consider, it's not just, I'm going to talk about news here, ki it's not like on it's only us as in Indians or people around us or a particular age. So there was a recent study by Reuters, compared to 2017, I guess, and compared to present day scenario, roughly 40% of people have started to avoid news. And that's interesting, because when the same report, it digs deeper into the case, and the entire reason was that 30% feel it's too negative, and another 30% feel that it's way too overwhelming of an emotion to perceive in our daily lives, and another 30% is it's too much of war coverage everywhere.
Yeah, because that's what exactly is happening in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's just after a point, it's not just that you start to feel nothing, it's just you choose to feel nothing because it's way too much of everything.
Yeah, and apart from that, because in the recent past, we've seen many extremes. So now, even the normal thing, which I mean, I shouldn't be the one saying normal to something which is a crime. But yeah, if you see war, but if you see a local crime, would you perceive a local crime of importance when there's war going on? So you've seen extremes, and the normal doesn't seem problematic anymore.
No, I very specifically I can compare these situations, because let's say I am writing a news on Tatva about a war, like the recent Iran war, what's happening, any regular update around it. It'll give a higher traction versus compare it to, let's consider any crime or an incident that took place in Delhi or Mumbai. Now, the entire reason is not that people have stopped caring. It's just their feed has integrated in a manner ki they expect a bit too much out of everything. Earlier, it was not the case. Earlier, the transaction as in engagement of likes, comments, and shares used to be similar amounts. It used to be divided amongst. Now, everyone wants a hook. Don't you feel कि यार without a hook आजकल people don't even consume videos or content?
Yeah,
anything.
and I feel even if it's news, it's still a piece of content if it's put on social media. It has to have certain amount of shock value. So if and this coming from our experience, if a news piece doesn't trigger an emotional release in you within the first 3 seconds, you are not bound to consume that anymore.
True.
And this is how we've turned our likelihood of consuming news from something which was in previous generations, people used to read a lot and people used to get their knowledge from the depth of things. Now we only wait for 3 seconds to see if it's worth my time or not.
Exactly. And what about the repetition situation? Ki so much of repetition is happening around content, around news, around everything that has been, flattening the emotional curve.
Again, it goes back to the point where I said if you say the word war 100 times, or if you use the word rape 100 times, on the 90th time, I think it flattens your emotional response to any situation.
Right.
And in this particular situation where we saw Iran and US and Israel fighting, what happened? You had drone footages coming every day, you had missile strikes happening every night. And after, I think, the first 5-7 days, people stopped to care.
And is it related to the platforms as well that we use on a daily basis, or is it our habits that have been built?
I think it's the way we've built ourselves over time. It more or less relies on that, because any which ways, if it's a platform, but if Your habit makes you to share it. You'll any which ways break the algorithm at one point. If you as a society feel something is share worthy, you are going against the algorithm to a certain extent. But if the algorithm also sees that this is what people are talking about, it starts rewarding that set of experiences, right?
So, given that we are on algorithm, have you ever noticed ki how our the way we consume things and the way we perceive things according to our feeds has been shifted or changed?
Yeah. That's 100% true because when you are scrolling and if you happen to see a meme first and then a piece of news, I mean, your brain works in a way that it perceives the news to be a same value as the meme because that's how it's done. And on platforms like social media, this is the case that it places a high value thing next to something that's not so high valued. So your brain perceives that both are equally disposable.
And when we talk about value, it could be emotional, it could be either ways, right? Like, let's say, obviously, when we are on platforms or even in real life, our attention has now over the time replaced empathy, and it has become like currency these days because people are feeding on it.
And I think we've reached a point where people only pay heed to things or give attention towards things that affects them directly. So if there's some piece of content that has a monetary value attached to it, or if there's something that's personally attacking you or calling you out, or maybe giving you benefits to your health, only then are people attached to see it for long.
And plus, what performs best is something that has to trigger your emotions at very, peak. Otherwise, that content doesn't work. Chalo, that's a separate thing. Even these days, psychological stimulations has increased, and people tend to, a normal emotion triggering will not even impact you. Like you would just keep it aside कि भाई ये तो बहुत नॉमिनल है जबकि एक टाइम पे वो भी बहुत वैल्यू.
And a few months back, I even came across this point which said that in the US, social media now is the most looked after thing for news. So now think about it. If your muscle memory, the same that orders a food item on a food app, is the same one that scrolls a feed where you get news and memes and everything, is the same, how would you perceive them to be different?
Agreed.
And in regards to what you said previously, we are all surrounded by systems which are now giving us updates on real time. You wear a watch, you can see everything that's happening around the world, the tragedies unfolding, the death counts increasing. But when you see that big picture, you always, and most usually, people tend to forget the human cost behind it. You just see that as a number, but you do not feel that there's a human face to it. And that's where it all goes shattering down.
Correct.
And that is where your apathy truly emerges from the moment you forget that there's a human cost behind all that's been happening.
And it's not just कि सिर्फ एक emotional value भी इसके साथ है. It's just mentally, and it's not just कि हम सिर्फ इस generation की बात कर रहे हैं. यहाँ पे we're talking about the entire, social media consuming, internet consuming population across the globe. They've started to care so less, and it's no more about emotions. It's about the burden, it's about the burnout, it's about over consumption of everything from across, internet. It could be we're ordering food, you're talking about numbers here. We have our watch, everything is moving right away ekdam quickly. Let's say we're ordering food, we're tracking the location of the driver right away. We're ordering any, let's say even on Amazon, we continuously check when it's coming, when it's not. A lot of times we are even given delivery का तो location भी पता लग जाती है कहाँ पहुँचा है and everything. So this is something that has not only created problematic for us, it has ended up becoming a very mentally heavy consumption वाला एक process. And उसकी वजह से I feel we don't have any space left in our brains to even process emotions.
I'll talk about it very personally because I think it comes from a personal experience, but this is also in some ways generic. That if you want to feel an emotion, you need some sort of a cool down period to at least see what's happened, take that with you, sit with it, and then analyze the happenings and then form an opinion onto it and then decide how you feel about it, right? But in this age, do you feel when your brain is still buzzing from the meme that you previously saw, you'd be able to care about a war that's happening in some part of the world? because your dopamine is already very high.
But that is what is expected out of us, na? In this age of technology, aren't we always expected to consume simultaneously a dozen pieces of content, not even dozen, probably hundreds, and then we're expected to reciprocate to each and every one of them?
Yeah, that's expected out of you, but I wouldn't say that you were supposed to do that.
You're never supposed to do that.
Yeah, because it's at the end of the day easier for systems to guide a dumb population rather than a person who's asking for what they want and what should the world look like.
Exactly. And plus, given such a situation has occurred, ki so much of things are dumped upon us. As individuals, we are obviously given the dopamine, given the entire, given the addictive nature of social media. We have seen the recent case where a girl has won a good significant compensation from Meta and I guess another social media platform. And the entire reason behind it was the addictive nature was actually found in social media. And she said she was not able to focus on her studies and all. So that is what. So addictivity is one thing. Then there is obviously the dopamine. Then there is the FOMO regarding consumption of patterns. And at a point of technology where if we are not using it, we are ousted from your peer groups and everything, or you are called out for not being technologically advanced. It becomes a burden upon us, and when we consume it, it becomes very problematic for our brains. It becomes difficult for us to live our lives normally. And when you say ki we are not emotionally available to different things, obviously इतना ज्यादा हो गया, क्या करें आप, क्या बोलते हैं, you end up becoming numb. And this numbness sometimes I feel is good, क्योंकि चाहिए भाई, for our brains which are so much busy all the time, each and every second. I don't think so we particularly ever get time with ourselves these days. Do you think कि, this generation actually has time to put out for themselves? No, this is how they do it.
Yeah, that's partially true. But I think the point that you made, where we as humans have been bombarded with content and the way we consume has changed so much and we get FOMO and all of that, is still partially valid. But in all these span of years, when was it that we became aware of where we are headed? I don't think even now we see the world going somewhere that doesn't care for each other. So if you are, as a human race, are following a set of rules that's easier for even people sitting at the top to make you follow, then why not? Because when you are consuming news on social media or when you do not care for the world, isn't it easier for them to inflict wars all across because nobody cares for nobody?
Or probably a lot of people care about an island.
Yeah. Coming back to the point that you just made, that we do actually need to be numb in certain sorts to be somewhere mentally present, I would agree saying that, yeah, your sort of numbness is a way for you to preserve your wealth, because the moment you are stressed, your productivity automatically decreases. And in this age and the generation where we belong to, the culture that it follows of hustling every time, the moment you start to care too much for anything, you automatically dip down in terms of how you work.
And plus, caring about anything actually makes you be out of comfort. And we are way too used to comfort these days with everything that is happening.
I would say that is exactly a fact. Because when you order food and it arrives to you in 10 minutes, when you want to see what's happening in the world and you open your phone and scroll by and you get the latest happenings in just a swipe. When you just are feeling the heat, you just need to pull out a remote and turn on the AC. If that's the kind of situation that people are living in, what's happening in Iran or what's happening in Israel or what's happening in any part of the world does not bother me, because the moment it starts to bother me, it would require me to raise my voice. And if not raise my voice, at some point it would need me to step out of my comfort zone. And we've been so comforted as humans that we no longer are able to switch out of where we belong in terms of the comfort that's been given to
And the
us.
max we can care about is put a story about it, put a status.
Yeah, because
Give-
that's convenient enough, right? Isn't
Exactly.
it?
You just have to move your finger.
Coming back to the internet and how it has made suffering so generalized, do you think in some ways I do believe that internet has made you aware of the suffering worldwide. But do you think in this age people have started to treat suffering also as a piece of content?
Given the age of internet that we are living in, it has definitely made us aware about suffering. It has made us aware about every sort of suffering or things out there at a very early age that we were initially probably supposed to, live life and find out. So, with time, a lot of people, whoever actually goes through or whoever knows how to cash in, that is something, yeah, people like to pull out content out of it.
Also, now with AI, we are already living in the era of deep fakes. So, not to care or being numb has to be a set of response just to pretend that you are not being duped by a deep fake video. And because people are already lazy enough to not go and check for facts.
While we are at it, and while we are talking, you're talking about numbness. What do you feel is the cost of this emotional numbness?
The cost goes beyond just feeds, just social media. I think there's a very big human cost to it. You lose touch of reality, you lose touch of human pain because all you see is numbers, all you see is content, and your brain perceives even human suffering to be a piece of content. You stop caring for what's happening to your parents. And this, I think we are not there yet, but if this pattern continues for long, that day shall not be far away from us where we do not care about our fellow human beings because somehow we've already been there. I think now for us, what's left and the next point that will happen is the geographical boundaries of us not caring will come down, and there'll be a point when we do not care for what's happening in our street. There'll be a point when we do not care if our house is on fire till the time we are safe.
It just sometimes I wonder कि where will it even end? क्योंकि ठीक है, we'll stop caring about everything. Then anyone would be able to do anything without expecting any repercussions or reality check from people, from real people.
The day we stop caring or the day we move beyond empathy, I think the society will not look as humane as we do now. And we've already transitioned from a more humane society to a lesser one, but we'll still go forward to a society where we care about is efficiency, all we care about is moving at the top, but do not see who's getting crumbled down under.
And over the time, I feel that is the reason why loneliness as an epidemic has, followed through and increased across the globe. One out of six people actually have claimed that they feel lonely, and they identify कि यार, it might end up causing them to take some action.
Given the fact that all you see and most of what people consume as news, people our age, is from social media, and we also some way are related to that. If all you see is based on hooks, is based on emotional triggers, is based on fast responses, then what actually happens to slow thinking?
Slow thinking, or let's consider artistic instincts or creative.
When I say slow thinking, I also come from a point what happens to emotions like empathy. What do you think will happen to empathy in the longer run?
It'll die. People will become emotionless. Anyways, we are becoming desensitized towards everything. And over the time, what happens is we tend to lose emotions. We obviously stop caring about things that are happening across globe. And I'm not going to repeat again the entire thing, but what happens is people, given the circumstance that roughly 4 out of 10 people have anyway started to avoid news in particular. The entire reason is कि यार, it's way too chaotic. How it'll end up is everyone will have the free will to do things and people will stop caring about it क्योंकि there would be no one to question. Why do you think the activists out there are trying to raise more and more voice about it? Because people have stopped caring already.
Yeah, people today do not care as much. But I remember that there was a time when people did care, and it was not long back enough. Just go back to 2020. We've all seen how people cared. If you remember, just go back in time and talk about the protests of Shaheen Bagh. That was in late 2019, is what I remember.
Yes.
Early 2020, late 2019. Everybody had opinions about what's happening. Everybody has opinions on the bill that was proposed. And that was the era. Just because Shaheen Bagh was a limelight example, I wanted to put it out because that was the time when people voiced their opinions. But what did they see? That the world became hyper polarized. You are either this side or that side. And if you don't belong to this side, you are either cancelled or made a culprit. So, in this world, do you think caring still matters? Because if you, any which ways, care for the other side, the one side that you do not care for would cancel you out.
That is something I feel in the modern times is bound to happen. So either way is whatever you choose to go right, you'll be bashed by the left. You go left, you'll be bashed by the right, and that is something that happens. And that is why I feel over the time people have stopped caring, and the concept of emotional outsourcing began. Because now you're not supposed to obviously voice out because otherwise you'll be bashed by either of the opinions. It could be even your person right besides you who could question your perspective, your voice, your choice. But in such situation of outsourcing the emotions or opinions, you depend on an influencers, celebrities, and ex individuals opinions, and you tend to depend on them. And in age of social media, it is more of developing here. People do not care about it themselves, but until and unless an opinion is stated by an individual whom they refer to often, or follow, or very evidently look up to, they depend upon their opinions, and once they form their opinions, you follow it.
That also stems from the part that in today's day and age, the parasocial burden is already so high. You relate more to an influencer's life than you would relate to reality. You would care about an influencer not being well than you would care about your neighbor not being well. So the moment you attach yourselves with one sided opinions and one sided relationships where there's just a digital relation, you forget the reality. And when you forget the reality, there's no empathy in you for the real world.
True. You basically become a spectator from a witness. Now you want to distance yourself. While you know things, you know there could be something done about the entire thing, but you try to keep a good distance from everything so that you don't have to engage with it.
Yeah. And also, while we've blamed algorithms, while we've blamed social media, don't you think just by the way we consume social media in the first place, our brains have now been made or tuned in sync with algorithms? If a tragedy now is not in HD, or if a tragedy now is does not have a hook, my brain wouldn't care for it.
Definitely.
And that's how our brains have been rewired. So before we just blame the algorithms plain and simple left and right, we must also see that it was us in the first place who never used it mindfully.
Yeah, that's true. Because earlier we were not even aware of what was going to happen in the long run, right? And initially it was just something we used to love. Slowly and steadily we got addicted. And then there came not just social media, there were different sources of technology that came in. And in the same way, they also made us addicted. They made us sit through, relax, and lose our minds to it. And with time, how it processed was we started caring less about everything. We started, basically not using our brain every now and then. And kyuki it was already an overburdened mind, you were like, it's okay to let be. And this was something that
Yeah,
was
this
going to
comes,
happen.
yeah, this definitely comes from a place where humans of today want comfort, where humans of today are lazy in some sorts to go and dig deeper. where humans of today do not care for the fellow human beings, where we as a race have stooped so low that we do not want to maintain real life human relationships, and a parasocial relationship excites us way more than a real one.
That's probably exactly why I feel, burn out every couple of months and I want to step outside of our usual, office or home structure, because it's just way too much for, if it's for me, if I feel it's for everyone out there, and I don't think so there could be anything done for it. It's just probably you'll have to go for a hiatus from everything out there that's happening, and it's practically not possible. You can't live under a rock, away from technology, away from social media addiction, away from anything, because if you start living away from all of these things that I listed, you would practically be invisible to other people.
Also, Yashodhar, I want to ask you this one simple question. Was there ever a time where you voiced your views or opinions very clearly and you now do not do that very often?
I do that. Matlab, earlier I used to, even write opinions and voice out a lot of things. It could be, anti-regime. It could be pro. It could be either of things. It could be, for a particular uh, bill, for a particular law. It could be against a particular politician. It could be anything. But over the time, I've stopped doing
And
that.
if I may ask why, what stopped you from doing that now?
First, obviously, it's the legal struggles, because obviously, as journalists or as a media personnel, we are pulled down and restricted a lot. And apart from this, I feel it's just way too much of chaos, because either of the sides, it
Will
could be
label you.
ideological or political, they would be willingly trying to push you down. They're gonna like bash you, obviously troll you and everything. And I was like, yeah, it's not worth so much of chaos on social media when it's already so chaotic.
So this now has to be a sort of cycle where earlier when people voiced their opinions, we out of lack of empathy for the person start calling them out. And when that happened, people stopped caring about anything, stopped feeling strongly about anything, or even if they do, they went into their own silos to not voice their opinions. Now that nobody does that very often, or nobody has a unique point of view to anything, we talk about why do people not feel anything. So that is how it all began. And today, the cost is a lot more than what it was previously in the day. Earlier, it was just a human being. Now it is people being killed and we not caring. People starving for food and there's no response from us, fellow humans.
And the only response is with respect to a particular celebrity or an influence and so on. And given a situation like that, why is that people, emotionally attach themselves to celebrities and, influencers, and they invest so much into them emotionally, and in return, they don't get anything?
It's again, it's all about comfort. When you're getting a set of opinion in rent from somebody, why would you want to use your brain to dig deep into the facts, develop your own POV, and then follow what you want to follow?
But why is that they invest less in real people over the time? मतलब I've seen a very good significant graph कि जितना उस साइड पे लोगों की डिपेंडेंस बढ़ रहे हैं, उतना रियल लाइफ में रियल पीपल के साथ कम हो रही है.
So, what happened? In this age of social media, what did it do? While earlier celebrities were actors, directors, politicians, now anybody amongst us, a real person for say, with a huge following or people whom people like to share a lot becomes a celebrity. Now that is a real person. Still a celebrity, but a real person. So now people perceive that he's still not a celebrity, and if he says something, it's more likely that he lives my reality. So why not follow him then a celebrity, but not the real world?
So the answer is not to feel everything at the same time or feel nothing. It is more likely that you should be feeling things more honestly, more selectively, and rather more deeply.
I'm sure that even today, you would have consumed a lot of stories, some on global crisis, some on women's safety, some on local politics, but you still wouldn't have felt a thing. And that is because the way these stories are designed are not to be felt, but only to be consumed. We've seen so many HD disasters that now, if a missile strike video is not in HD, we do not care for it. And that is probably why we've seen so much, but we care for none.
Thank you for watching the podcast. See you next time.